Hey friends, happy Wednesday, hump day, right? It is your friend Lisa, and let's talk some flower farming today, right? So Wednesday is Ask a Flower Farmer, and what in the world does that mean, right? If you're new here, that means that you can submit your questions and I'll do my best to answer your question and as many of them as I can during our time here together. And as you can see, I'm here at the Fulfillment Center. Wednesday is my paper pushing day. And just so glad to be here. It's always a nice break from my desk to jump on here and chit-chat with you guys for just a few minutes. Now, if you want to ask me a question that I can attempt to answer, you can just, if you see at the bottom of your screen, there's a bubble with the question mark in it. Just post your questions in there. That way they won't get lost in the feed of people joining us here. And, you know, whether it's flower farming or seed starting or home gardening, cut flower growing, farm dogs, flower farming business, whatever you got, bring us some questions. And so here in southeastern Virginia, we're still experiencing spring. This is it happens every few years, but we're actually having a true spring. It's kind of still cool at night in the 50s. Normally we're well above the 60s and even hitting the 70s sometimes at night. And so our cool flowers are just burning up a storm here. They are just very, very happy. Our warm season stuff is not quite jumping out of the ground. Normally by Memorial Day weekend, we're already cutting zinnias, and our zinnias are only about 20 inches tall right now. They're coming, but anyway, so, you know, what I've learned about the weather and flower farming, because, you know, I do everything outside. I am 100% a field and garden grower, right? So anything I kind of talk about or say, you can pretty much apply it to yourself at home. You just apply it to your season for the timing. It's always good for some things and not good for others. So there's always an up and a downside, and we're really happy to have some cool relief. It's just really nice to be able to plant the warm season stuff when the days are not going into the 90s in the afternoon, cooking stuff. So that's kind of what's happening here in southeastern Virginia, and I hope your season is off to a good start. So just remember, if you want to learn more about the Gardener's Workshop, you can head over to thegardenersworkshop.com. That's our home base. That's our website. Tons of stuff, y'all. Podcasts, videos, our online garden shop, our library of tons of online courses from myself as well as my peers like Dave Dowling, Jenny Love, Ellen Frost, Stephen Gretel, Val Shermer. I mean, there are just Amelia Ilo, all the people that are leading the industry that are just great educators. So we invite you to head over there and check that out. So I'm going to take a look and see what questions you guys have for me today. So let's see. Milk House Marketplace. Now that our frost date has passed, is it best to direct sow seeds in the ground or still start in trays? What a really great question that is. So I do not direct seed anything in spring and summer. And there's several different reasons why. One is it's just much more efficient and less work to start in trays. It's less seeds, more success, and less work. When you direct seed, the weed pressure and the need to keeping that seed bed super moist during the day, particularly as it warms up, is just creates a lot of extra work versus just walking out with those transplants that you've started, that you've cared for, most often standing up. You know, you're not on the ground tending to them, and it's once a day kind of short and easy chores to take care of them. So we do not direct sow anything in spring and summer. As commercial farmers, that's how most of us do it, is by actually planting by transplants whenever that is the option that's available, meaning those flowers, think of zinnias and sunflowers, both of those can surely be direct sown. But if you are a successful direct sower, you know that you have to oversow. You have to plant more seeds than plants, which means you not only waste seeds, but then you have to thin, and you have to keep that seed bed weed free while you're waiting for those seeds to germinate, right? So it's just more work. So that's just a personal choice, but we continue to start transplants indoors. Stone Gable Flower Farm. In your zone, when do you pull out your snaps and replace them with warm season annuals? So that varies from year to year, and that 100% depends on how they're doing. It's all about, it's not the same time each year because it all depends on the conditions that we're having, which leads to the quality of the stems being produced and the number of stems being produced. We, in fact, pulled our snaps out last week, the earliest we've ever done it. And even on this year of having this ongoing spring weather, we got rust. We've never had rust disease on our snaps before. So we pulled them out and they're gone. They were put in the trash. They did not go in the compost heap. So you have to judge based on the quality and the quantity of the production. If they're no longer producing stems that you're going, look at that beautiful flower. If you're looking at it and saying, should I use that? That's when you start thinking it's time to pull this crop out. I have no qualms ripping out a crop, even though other people might think that it still looks good from a distance. That's not what my garden's about, right? It's about using the flowers, top quality, and having the confidence to use them and not have to be examining them. That's just not in our wheelhouse. Let's see. Fisher River flower. Without a cooler, just a cool room. How far ahead of farmer's market date? Trying to avoid old flowers. So, first off, there's two sides to that story. I don't think anybody can be long-term, sustainably successful without wasting flowers, only having one outlet a week, meaning no matter where it is. Our optimal goal, and I talk about this so much in flower farming school, it's like you have to juggle a lot of balls. You need to have 2 outlets at least for your flowers, one at the first of the week and one at the end of the week, and especially if you do not have a cooler, because that means that, we harvested flowers on Monday, they were delivered to Florist on Tuesday. We harvest flowers on Thursday, they were made into bouquets and delivered to farmer's market on Saturday. And to bouquet subscriptions on Friday and to supermarkets on Friday. So that is, if you're not going to if a cooler's not really an option for you, then you need to get your hustle going and find out an outlet for the other part of the week, that first of the week harvest, because flowers produce the best abundance and quality when they're cut at least twice a week. And to sit on those flowers, I just wouldn't do it. So many of the flowers, you can hold them in a cooler for several days, but that was never our practice. We tried not to do that. Things happen to flowers just when they age, even in a cooler. And then there's additional issues like if the humidity is not proper, the petals can get dehydrated. So the simplest, most cost-effective, highest profit way to take care of that problem without a cooler, or even with a cooler, is to have 2 outlets. So, a bouquet subscription, maybe to businesses. There's just lots of ways to sell flowers. And that would be my number one thing. For how many days ahead of farmers markets? We typically harvested on Wednesdays and Thursdays to make bouquets and prepare on Fridays to go to market on Saturday. And that would be, we held them in a cool room, an air-conditioned room that stays at 68 degrees. Plus we had a cooler, but we didn't rely on that for holding flowers, only on special occasions, not as a regular deal. Hope that helps and inspires you. Because sometimes it seems so hard that we create these mountains like I can't afford a cooler, or I don't have a place for a cooler, or my setup won't allow a cooler, whatever. Fine. I did it, y'all, for probably 6 to 8 years without a cooler. Because I had all my flowers sold as often as we kind of harvested. That's the way to just keep that ball rolling. Dixie Cottage Garden. How do I pinch cosmos? So we pinch either 7 to 10 days before we plant while they're still in the soil blocks, or 7 to 10 days after we plant. We're getting ready to do that right now on the farm. They've been planted and they're all starting. They're well established. They're over the transplant ordeal, and now we're going to pinch them. And I just pinch them back to the bottom, like 2 to 4 leaves at the base of the stem. I pinch them hard. I pinch everything really hard. So it's the same way. And my pinching policy is that I pinch typically, this is not always, but my goal is to pinch 50% of every crop. And the reason I do that is I want the best of both worlds. I want the earliest bloom, which is the unpinched half, right? And then I want the earliest branching, which is the other side of that story, right? So you get the best of both worlds when I pinch half. Now, I just pinched, this has been the worst spring for warm season seedlings, right? We sat on them longer than usual. They just weren't very happy. It isn't warm outside. So we're doing a lot more pinching now than we have done in the past because so many of them are just struggling. So you kind of just, my goal is 50-50, but it doesn't always happen that way. Flowers to table. How much is too much dill, Dara, or Leah? Trying to time for fall weddings, was thinking 5 to 10 foot of each. I've never grown Orlea in the fall. I've never gotten them to grow any of those, actually. I've never planted in late summer to do for fall, but totally depends on, 10 foot of any crop is kind of what we're going with these days, as we are now more of an education garden instead of a big production garden of non-essential crops other than like sunflowers and some of the others. I do 10 feet. I try to do 10 feet of all the different varieties. So I think 10 foot, better to have too much than not enough. And let us know how that goes for you and where you are, if that actually works out. Fuss and Fiddle. I fall planted Orlea per your guidance, zone 6. How far down should I cut when harvesting? Will they come again? Will they come again definitely depends on what your continued conditions are. Ours is growing like gangbusters this year. And I go low because what you'll find is the shoots that sprout where the cut is won't grow as long if that stem does not come from the bottom 8 to 10 inches of the plant. So even though ours is almost thigh high right now, it is really happy this year. I cut it deep, and then hopefully that encourages a bunch of side shoots. So congratulations on that. Orlea is a great flower, and if any of those that you don't cut fresh, if you leave the flowers, they develop this beautiful green seed head if you can catch them, just like you do flowers, right? You got to catch them at the right time. They are really awesome filler. Chris asks, best stage to harvest agrostemma. That is in tight bud. As soon as the bud it's visible what color the bloom is going to be. You know what I mean? That means it's starting to emerge from its little sheath a little bit. That's when we cut it. But agrostemma is actually, it's like a spray. There's multiple blooms on a spray. And so the first one almost always would get away from me, would get open, and then I cut it and leave it because there's so many other buds on that stem. Agrostemma, just like Godicia, seems like such a delicate flower, but man, does it hold up in a vase. We really, really love it. Blake's Blooms. How long can I store sunflowers in my fridge? I really cannot answer that. I would say you can definitely hold sunflowers for a few days in the proper humidity and temperature. of a cooler. But again, as I mentioned earlier, sometime if you're ever in the grocery store, if you frequent a grocery store that sells flowers, or you go into a flower shop, particularly the big grocers that sell a lot of flowers, where they'll have straight bunches, look at the sunflower petals. Those sunflower petals are all shriveled up and dehydrated, and that's from being in a cooler too long, humidity problems, not enough humidity. There is a beaver at the front door. That's a groundhog. That's what I meant. He just walked, y'all, this is too funny. Yeah. Our front door is glass. There was a groundhog that was looking in. Maybe he wants to learn how to farm.
Maybe he has a pickup order.
I don't know. He's that way. Too funny. We have all kinds of, our fulfillment center backs up to a big wooded area. Anyway, we have lots of wildlife around here. So I would say you can safely sit on sunflowers if they're kind of closed for a couple, 3 days, but don't make it a practice at all. So the groundhog made the getaway. Hi, Lisa. Do you have any tricks for germinating amaranth? Mine is very spotty, thinking about direct sowing heavily and then thinning. So amaranth, which is normally a really strong germinator. I mean, amaranth is one of the most aggressive, called pigweed, the I don't even want to call it a native, but I guess it is. The variety that we have on our farm, it's horrible. It's a farmer's, it's like the worst thing to happen to you. It's such a strong and quick germinator. But all these hybrids are not hybrids. Those that have been bred for all this special stuff that we have aren't always as forthcoming as that. But what I do is definitely on a seedling heat mat. I believe, I have to look it up, I don't do it by memory, that the seeds should not be covered. And we use the wide weave burlap. We just laid that on top of the soil blocks to kind of hold some of the moisture. And see if that goes. It will probably, if you're warm enough. So we're still not warm enough here that if I were a direct seeder, it's still not warm enough because the soil is 15 to 20 degrees, typically cooler than the air temperature. And we're still only in the 60s and 70s during the day, and it's going in the 50s at night. So our soil is still pretty cool. You want at least 65 degrees soil to get it to germinate. So you might want to check your soil temperature before you do that. But you might just try again, and make sure it's all about the heat. Do you consider Status a cool flower? Is it still too late to sow Status in Zone 5? Status is a cool season hardy annual. And we were just looking at that this morning. It is so incredible. So here in my Zone 7B, 8A, it is fall planted. We start transplants, plant them out in the fall, and the abundance that those plants produce, you just cannot believe how many stems that one happy plant will put out, and tall. And so it really depends on, I guess, where you're in Zone 5. You might be able to get away with it. If you don't have hot, humid summers, once you learn that a plant is a cool season hardy annual, you just then know what it prefers, right? And if you don't have hot, humid summers, which I suspect you don't, if you're in Zone 5, maybe you can get away with it. You cannot fall plant, I would not think, but you can very early spring plant. And in fact, I was thinking about this as I was driving up here this morning. The real benefit to people that live in much colder regions like Zone 5 and 4 and 3, people up in Canada and Alberta and those places that just get heavy snow load and frigid winter conditions. The real gift of cool flowers is getting stuff planted in what we call very early spring. And that's 6 to 8 weeks, up to 6 to 8 weeks before your last spring frost. So much earlier than you can get any of these warm season things in. And so really stacking the game in your favor by whenever you need to start transplants, however far in advance, I would guess 4 to 6 weeks before that 6 to 8 week window, or when you can actually get out and plant in your garden if you have snow load. And here's the other thing, is you have to prepare those bed areas in the fall, even though you're not planting them in the fall. Get your bed totally prepped, fertilizer, amended, ready and waiting, mulched, whatever you're going to do. I keep thinking that groundhog's coming back. And just have it ready and waiting. And we can't talk about it now, but there's been lots of imaginative ways. My friends I have friends in Alaska and in Alberta, places that just get long frigid winters, how they prepare in the fall and make it so they can uncover those beds as early as physically possible to plant these cool season transplants in so much longer before you can a warm season. So zone 5, that's what you would need to do, is to plant 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date with status. So tips for growing campanula in the field. So first off, it is the variety you select. We only grow Champion. That is a true hardy annual, not a biennial. It's from seed to bloom, I think, in 4 months. So that means, and it's got a light situation. So we fall planted. It is winter hardy, I believe, to zone 5, I think. You have to check that out in the book. Zone 5, plant transplants. Campanula is a seed just like Lysianthus. It takes longer. If you're a beginner seed starter, campanula might not be the seed for you. Buy plugs. I buy plugs. I started from seed for many years, and just like Lysianthus, it's like I have better things to do with my time. I buy plugs of those things that just take a really long time to start. So plant transplants in the fall. Get them in the ground. That 6 to 8 week window before your first fall frost, and they winter over beautifully. We don't ever cover them. They are deer bait, and definitely net them because they get enormous in the garden. I pinched 50% of my crop, and I haven't shown the image yet, but we do have an image of a pinched bucket and the unpinched bucket, and there's about that much difference. The unpinched are bigger, more voluptuous, obviously, and then those that were pinched still are given awesome bouquet size, for you making mixed bouquets, but they aren't the grade A's that my florist would love to have. So that's what I plant them in, full blasting sun and well-prepared soil. Let's see. What is Kim saying? Thanks to you, I have learned to grow beautiful flowers and condition them to last longer. But I stink at making bouquets. Have you ever considered making an on-demand course for bouquet making? Kim, you're my student, aren't you? I think you are. We have a speed bouquet. I think there's actually more than one in the actual course. And I will tell you that I used to be exactly like you. I'm not really interested in making bouquets. That's the whole problem. But I needed to make them for market and stuff. And making speed bouquets, which just means the method that we make them by, which Suzanne kind of perfected, my sister, just simplifies it, and it produces gorgeous bouquets that are incredibly quick. If you didn't watch, I think it was last week, it was the Friday before Mother's Day, I posted a reel of me and Kelly and Susie. Susie had never made bouquets before, and speed bouquet making is super easy for anybody to do once you just get the basic steps of what they are. So Kim, if you're a student, check out the course. You can search the course by keyword, put in bouquet, and see what comes up. If you're not a student, it's available anytime, y'all. My garden blooms. When can bread seed poppies be cut for using in bouquets, pods? So if you saw the reel I posted today, our poppy pods are amazing right now. So when I was using them for bouquets, for fresh work, I like to cut, those pods will easily get as big as my fist. That's not what I want for them for fresh use. I want them smaller, more like maybe the size between a golf ball and a tennis ball maybe, and to get it before they start getting blemished. Blemishes are bug, poop, and pee, y'all. So when bugs crawl all over them, they soil them, or rain can actually make stains on them also. So once they get to that size, that's when we start harvesting the heck out of them to put 1 or 2 or maybe 3 into a mixed bouquet. So it's really up to you. We leave them longer because we grow seed, right? But that is the goal, is to use them as a fresh green pod. So hope that helps you. Hit the wrong button, y'all. If you sow campanula in the fall, when would you do it? So first off, you start them indoors. You don't sow it out in the garden. Not champion. Champion's a hybrid, so it'll bloom the following spring. And you would start that seed probably 10 to 12 weeks before you actually, just like a lisianthus. So 10 to 12 weeks before you want to plant it. Flatwoods Bee Farm. Hello, friend. Am I wrong when I tell my florists not to put sunflowers in the cooler? I told them to leave out of the cooler to finish opening. Thanks so much. So, no, there's definitely, and here's, something else. When we actually, on our farm, I had a big walk-in cooler, still do. We literally would turn the walk-in cooler off once we got through June, once the cool flowers were pretty much done, because as I mentioned earlier, how quickly we move flowers. We didn't really, and it's a lot of work, putting all the flowers in the cooler and bring all the flowers out of the cooler. That is all a lot of physical moving. Another plus to moving your flowers the day after you actually cut them. But once our cool flowers were kind of done, and we were moving into just the warm season, tender annual harvest time, which for us was July, August, and September, we literally turned our cooler off because we move fast. Secondly, they just really don't need that cooler, and some of them actually resent it. So no, you're actually totally true. But if they should kind of know which ones, how fast their flowers should move. So, I wouldn't say don't put them in the cooler. I would say, you do realize that if you leave them out of the cooler, some of these may open faster, or you can put them in the cooler to slow them down. We used to actually put on our invoice for our supermarkets, for sure, because they bought lots of straight bunches of zinnias and basil. Right on the invoice, on the zinnia line, we would say, 22 bunches of zinnias, and it would say in all caps, do not put in cooler, because there's so many people working at some of these places that would ultimately happen. And then, of course, they say, hey, your flowers died. Well, lo and behold, they were in the cooler, right? So, yeah, that's really great to educate your customers. And a lot of the flowers that we sell are flowers they're not really familiar with. And I want to just give a plug. The book by John Dole, Post-Harvest Handling of Flowers and Greens, I think it's called. It's only available at the Association of Specialty Cut Flowers. And yes, friends, it's $80. And if you're a serious cut flower grower, you have to have it. That is published and paid for by the association. And that's why it costs so much, because there aren't tens of thousands of books being sold. That is a detailed index of almost every flower that tells you step by step how to condition them. And that's a great service for you to actually provide to your florist, to be able to say, well, actually what you need to do for this is XYZ. But yeah, that's a great book. No pictures. Well, there's a few pictures, not many pictures though. All right, this is last one. What are your favorite quick flowering flowers? Zone 7, friend's wedding is on August 12th and want to bulk up on more flowers. I mean, I could start anything now and have it blooming by then, but any of the annuals, it just depends on what it is you're looking for. There's a sunflower for every color palette, from white to peach to orange to yellow lemon. Definitely sunflowers grown small so they don't look like sunflowers, the gold light. Of course, zinnias, lemon basil, ageratum. You know, there's just endless possibilities. Tons of celosia, tons of gomphrena. I mean, there's just all of them. So any of those warm season tender annuals that are really, really happy. So friends, it's 1 o'clock. Thanks for joining me here today. And so this week on the Friday live shopping show, we have a all things marigold kind of day, and it was really not because the marigolds are blooming yet, although I did see 2 blooms this morning. We'll see what happens by tomorrow. But I'm going to be singing the praises of the underpraised marigold. Marigolds were as important to our business as sunflowers were. And so many people just think, oh my gosh, they stink. Well, do you not know, y'all? There is a secret to that. So easy to resolve it. Join me on Friday and I will actually tell you what the skinny is on all things marigolds. So, all right, friends, give me a like and a love and share it if you can in your stories, if you're enjoying these, because us building our audience is what our goal is, and our mission to help more people grow cut flowers. And we just love being a part of your day. And thanks so much for joining me. Ciao.